Hi there, this is Sagequeen from GameTourist.com, and this is part 5 of my Adept guide for Mass Effect 2.
In the last video, I mentioned that when it comes to making an Adept build that works for you, you first need to know how your basic powers work, then you need to decide whether you're going to take a bonus power and which one, and lastly, you'll need to decide how many points you want to spend in everything. In the last video, we covered the basic powers, so this video will be about the bonus powers that the Adept most often takes.
Now, bonus powers are additional skills that become available to you as you gain the loyalty of your squad mates. Once unlocked, a bonus power is then available for all subsequent characters you create on an account. Now, you can change your bonus powers at any time you like, and you can redo all your skill points too. All you have to do is mine enough element 0 and then head to the TAC lab and retrain. But be aware that once you settle into a build that works for you, it's rather hard to switch up your tactics, so you may just want to pick a skill and stick with it. Now, rather than going into every bonus power in detail, which would just take way too long, I'm going to highlight the ones that are most often chosen for the Adept class. Please note, I'm going to try and keep spoilers to a minimum, but I will be speaking a bit about the people from whom you will be picking up those bonus powers. Now, the vast majority of Adepts will end up learning their bonus powers from fellow biotic squad mates. It fits in with the role-playing flavor, and those biotic powers tend to be very useful for the Adept's arsenal. With that said, there is going to be one non-biotic skill on this list, and that is Tally's Energy Drain. Simply put, Energy Drain steals energy away from enemy shields and or synthetic targets, and adds that borrowed power to your own shields. As I've said over and over in previous videos, shields are a real problem. Biotics do squat damage against shields, and you have to pop them off in order to send enemies flying with a cool skill like Singularity. And because it adds this energy to your own shields, it gives you a little bit of a defensive boost to round out your offensive Adept arsenal. The downsides are that first, it's not a biotic skill, it's a tech one, and if you wanted to keep with the biotic theme, and a lot of people do, you may want to pass it by. Also, if you really want protection, using this to boost your shields will only help you if you have enemy energy to cannibalize. You do run into shielded enemies a lot in the game, but if you take on the Blood Pack, for example, there's nothing to work with there. And while you do need a strategy in place for how you're going to deal with shields, some people don't want to give up their bonus power slot on a skill specifically designed for dealing with shielding and synthetics only. Energy Drain has a slightly longer recharge timer of 6 seconds, so you may find it's more useful to you to bring along squad mates such as Garrus, Miranda, or Tally, who can be your can opener, as it were, and pop shields off of the enemies, and you focus on the juicy meat popsicle inside with skills like Singularity and Throw. Where I've seen Energy Drain most often employed is by people who want to ignore their bonus powers and focus on their basic Adept powers instead. Even if you put just a single point into Energy Drain, it'll give you a tool to use on shields and synthetics, and that'll leave you free to be biotically well-rounded elsewhere. Alright, so on to the actual biotic powers. The first one is Warp Ammo, which you'll get from Jack. While Warp Ammo is popular for Adepts because of the biotic connection, its strengths and challenges are similar to those of other ammo types. Ammo powers last a whole mission. Warp Ammo in particular augments your ammunition by giving your bullets the same properties as many warp missiles. They'll tear through barriers and armor and health more effectively. Warp Ammo either evolves into a powerful version that only Shepard can use, or to a squad version which allows you and everyone in your immediate squad to use Warp Ammo. The advantages of Warp Ammo are that first, it gives your bullets extra oomph, and like all ammo powers, you can put it on for a mission, and then it lasts for the whole mission. And that's nice because since your skills are all in the same recharge timer, this is one skill you don't have to use over and over. You just put it on, and after a short cooldown, you can focus on your other biotic abilities. The downsides are that first, Warp Ammo doesn't do much damage against shields, but no biotic powers do. And also, you can only have one ammo type active at a time. So if anyone else activates a squad-wide ammo power, that will turn off your Warp Ammo. That's not a bad thing per se, but some people prefer to just bring along a squaddy with the relevant team ammo if you actually want to borrow their ammo type for a mission, and then they prefer to take something else as a bonus power. The next skill is Slam, which you get from Miranda Lawson. Slam lifts an enemy up in the air and then throws them to the ground, crushing their bones. Like Throw, Slam is a gravity-regulating skill in that it does its best damage on unprotected targets. It's less terrain-dependent than Throw, however, as you may not always have a wall or cliff handy to throw mobs off of, but there's always the floor to slam them into. Again, husks will die if you pull them off the ground, so Slam does insta-kill on husks. And like Throw, Slam has a short recharge timer of only 3 seconds. One challenge with Slam is that it is so similar to Throw in so many respects that it makes Throw feel redundant, and it doesn't feel like Slam adds a whole lot new to your arsenal. Slam can be used for a biotic combo if you hit it on the upswing, but it's a lot trickier to target correctly than other skills.
Finally, Slam is a skill that gets its best damage when it's fully evolved. At lower levels, it will simply drop targets behind cover where they can nurse their wounds and or regenerate. So if you wanted to spend minimal points on your bonus power, this is probably not a very good option for you.
Now, Dominate is a skill that some people don't even know about because it's the skill that you get from Morinth. Now, if you don't actually want to put Morinth in your party, what you can do is do the Samara loyalty mission, choose Morinth, then after you've finished it, save the game at least once, then reload the Samara loyalty mission, and this time choose Samara. You will still have unlocked Morinth's Dominate. Keep in mind that to recruit Morinth, you'll have to have fairly high Renegade or Paragon points in order to pass the Persuasion check. Simply put, Dominate is AI hacking for organics. It brainwashes your targets and causes them to fight against one another. Now, clearly this is hella powerful in that it's taking a cue right out of Sun Tzu's Art of War, get your enemies to fight one another. In addition to brainwashing your target, you also give them a biotic barrier to help protect them as they go about taking out their former allies. While this is very useful in that you see organic enemies through the majority of the game, there are some sections where you will not find them at all. The early part of the game up until you reach the Normandy, Tally's missions, Legion's missions, the entirety of Project Overlord, during those sections when you're fighting primarily Geth, this skill will be of no use to you whatsoever. So for those missions, you may want to head over to the Tech Lab and learn something else. Also, like so many biotic powers, you have to bust through shielding before you can use it on a target. This is also a skill that acts very oddly against certain enemies. For example, since Harbinger is already a case of possession, you cannot dominate him. However, if you dominate the Collector agent that he's just about to possess, you can take him over. Also, since husks are zombies, if you dominate a husk, it will just insta-kill him. There are also reports that if you possess one enemy and then another, they can sometimes both turn on you as the AI gets confused. By all reports, this skill works best when leveled fully, especially to group dominate, making it yet another skill that's most effective when it's fully leveled. Lastly, this skill, like Morinth, is rather creepy, but if you don't mind the role-playing aspect, one cannot deny its gameplay advantages. On the other side of the Samara-Morinth decision is Samara with her incredibly powerful Reave. Reave is sort of like Warp plus 10 in that it does major damage to barriers, armor, and health. So first, it takes off 2 of the 3 types of pesky protections that you're always dealing with, and it's especially effective with anything to do with the Collector since they're all barriers in health. But the beauty of Reave is its damage to health. If you get an enemy down to their skivvies, Reave will rip their health away and add it to your own in this cool graphical display of kind of like biotics and blood. It does damage over time to the enemy while healing Shepherd. It's kind of a glorious form of biotic vampirism. It also cripples the enemy in pain while it does its mojo, so it manages to take off protections, hurt the enemy, heal you, disable them. I mean, really, the only thing this doesn't do is make you espresso in the morning. The downsides of Reave are that first, it's most effective when fully leveled, making it a poor option if you wanted to ignore your bonus power. It also has a longer recharge timer of 6 seconds, like Warp. And also, like Warp, it doesn't much affect shields. Lastly, since Reave is so like Warp, it kind of makes your friendly old biotic missile a little redundant, as it will be competing with Warp for your recharge timer. But as far as damage skills go, this is one of the best. Stasis is the newest skill to be added to Shepherd's arsenal. It came out with Lara the Shadowbroker DLC as one of Liara's skills. Now, some PC versions, mine included, are buggy in that you cannot choose Stasis at character creation even after completing the DLC for a previous character. So you have to wait until you get to the Normandy to unlock the skill in the Tech Lab via advanced retraining. Now, Stasis in Mass Effect 1 was kind of lame. It froze an enemy in place, it kept them from attacking you, but you couldn't harm them with bullets unless you took the Bastion specialization, and even then it wasn't very cool. In Mass Effect 2, Stasis is still the same in that it freezes an enemy and takes them out of commission, sort of like a sleep spell that they can't wake from. However, and this is the beauty of the new Stasis, when the Stasis wears off, the enemy will fall to the ground, stunned and highly weakened to damage at that time. Now, I've read reports that the amount of bonus damage in the post-Stasis attack is actually bugged, meaning that you'll get 3 to 4 times as much damage as you're supposed to. So just a few bullets will finish off any target, even if they started out with full shields and full health. And as of now, there are no plans to fix that feature. That makes it the only biotic power that's effective regardless of enemy protections. Another argument for taking Stasis is that the only time that you can have access to this skill outside of Lara the Shadowbroker is to give it to Shepherd. Samara will still have Reave, Miranda will still have Slam, but the only way that you can bring Stasis into the main mission of Mass Effect 2 is by giving it to Shepherd. The challenges are that first, Stasis does lend itself to a different style of gameplay. While you can use it at the mid or long range, I've seen it most effective if you can freeze a target, run up close, puppy guard it, as it were, holding off other mobs with warp and singularity, and then cap that mob in the head the moment they fall down. This means that rather than staying at a single vantage point to survey the battle, Stasis encourages a kind of on-the-move style of adepting. That's not really a bad thing, it's just a different thing, and if you like to stay back in one spot and cover, this may not really fit with the way you're playing. The other challenge with Stasis is that it's trickier than other skills to unlock, because it requires the lair of the Shadow Broker to get it. But it isn't a simple 1 or 2 hour loyalty mission. It's a guesstimated 8 hours of gameplay through 2 boss mobs, and since it fits best as the epilogue to the suicide mission, and really, do yourself a favor and play it after you beat the game, that means you'll find yourself doing a full playthrough of Mass Effect 2 before you can even unlock this skill. Now, the last skill is Barrier. People will tell you that Barrier is not viable on Insanity difficulty. I'd tell them that I'm not viable on Insanity difficulty without it. Clearly, I'm biased because this is what I use, but I'm also well aware of its weaknesses, so we'll start there. First of all, Barrier is a little bit boring. Compared with skills that rip away enemy blood or smash their face, Barrier just glows. I mean, now don't get me wrong, I often toss it on just before I hit a cutscene so that my shepherd can look incredibly awesome and intimidating all at once. But compared with the carnage of, say, Reave, Barrier just looks sparkly. It was also standard issue in Mass Effect 1, and some people want to try something new as a result. Secondly, Barrier is not a damage skill. It's purely defensive, and if you want biotic damage at your fingertips, this won't give you more of that. It can actually push you into a style of gameplay that makes battles go on a little longer, with equal time given to both defensive and offensive play, rather than just a straight-up heavy offensive attack. One thing I've commonly heard is that Barrier isn't necessary, that if you are playing the game right, you will never be taking damage anyways. Okay, whatever. At any rate, you do recharge your shields if you duck under cover, so it is not necessary to have Barrier as a skill. That is true. Barrier also has a long recharge timer of 12 seconds. Even if you get your Biotic Mastery, that only takes the skill down to 10 seconds for recharge time, and that's the longest recharge time of any Biotic skill. Lastly, on the higher difficulties, your enemies shoot a lot, and that rapid gunfire can just cut through your barriers like a warm knife through butter. You may find that if you put on a barrier, it will just come tumbling right back on down. And as a result, if you decide to take Barrier as a skill, it really will require you to evolve it to its highest level. Otherwise, it's just not going to do you much good. However, if your Barrier wasn't getting shot out, it would be Shepard's brains getting shot out. That is the advantage. One of its strengths is that Barrier soaks up damage, greatly adding to your survivability. Yeah, sometimes it only gives you a split second more of shielding, but sometimes that's just what you needed. Now, I mentioned that one reason to consider Stasis is that the only way to bring it into the main mission is by giving it to Shepard. That's also an argument for Barrier, because Miranda can still use Slam for you, Samara can use Reave for you, but Jacob's Barrier will only help him. One cool thing about Barrier is that it has no activation animation like the other protection skills of Fortification. That means it will go on instantly, even when Shepard is stunned. And believe me, when you're stunned from husks clawing at your face or taking a rocket in the teeth, that's exactly when you want that Barrier on ASAP. Barrier does take longer to recharge, but it lasts a long time, a full minute, right, even at level 1. Now, on higher difficulties, you're always more likely to see your Barrier burn out than to fade away, to quote Kurt Cobain. So I'd say go for heavy Barrier. And Barrier is a critical skill for oh crap moments. Some people may not take damage, and as much pride as I have in my girl gaming abilities, I do admit to having my shield shot out and needing that Barrier. If you have to run for a better spot in cover or dodge a flanking enemy, Barrier can give you the time that you need to do that. If you know a battlefield inside and out and every baddie that you're likely to face, terrific. But if you don't know them perfectly, Barrier can help you navigate missions that you've forgotten about or DLC that's new to you. And if you do get flanked, I find it safer to toss on Barrier, jump up above cover, and then shoot the guy coming at you than to try and get off a warp on him before one of his friends tags you in the head with a rocket launcher. Barrier also gives you a few more moments above cover to shoot off more bullets than the other guy, and sometimes that's all it takes to turn the battle around. And lastly, since Warp is a great damage skill, Singularity is a great trap skill, and Throw and Pull are fun terrain park style skills, I find that Barrier nicely rounds out your Adept skills by adding a solid defensive skill. Now, there are other bonus powers out there. The rest of them can be useful. They do differing amounts of damage, but you don't often see them on Adept builds. The last part of making your own build is to decide on a Biotic Mastery. Now, if you've already decided what basic skills you're going to rely on and which bonus power you're going to pick, then in the next video, I think you'll find that the choice between Bastion or Nemesis is a fairly easy one to make. We'll get to that next time. From Game Tours, this is Sagequeen. Happy hunting.